We're in Module 3, Topic 1, Lesson 1. We're just doing one page. We will be doing M3-15, and we're just doing the practice 1 through 6. Now, they don't give you room to do the work, so I'd recommend using a scratch sheet of paper and then just writing the answers next to each question. So if we start with number 1, it says 5x plus 15 equals 75 minus 25x. So first thing, of course, we're isolating x, but we have two x's on either side, so isolating it on either side is not very helpful. We need to move them to one side. Now, we have a couple options. We can either subtract the 5x from both sides to move it, or we can add the 25x to both sides to move it. Either way is fine. I like moving things so that it makes everything more positive, because obviously if we subtract the 5x, then it's going to be negative 30x over here, which is fine, but that's harder to deal with than adding 25x over to this side and getting positive 30x. So let's do that. So we'll add that 25x to both sides, because remember, this is like the equal sign is like a balance. Whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So that would get rid of that negative 25x. So now we have 30x plus 15 equals 75. So now it looks like your standard two-step equation. So we have the 30 multiplying and the 15 adding. We get rid of addition and subtraction first. So we'll subtract that 15. So we still have 30x over here. And now we have 60. And then some of you can already tell what x is going to be. But let's go through the steps. So 30 is multiplying by x. We'll need to divide. So x is 2. So we're just going to do that same thing for each problem. Let's move on to number 2. Now this one's annoying because it has fractions. Now you always have some options when there's fractions. We can always get rid of them. So if we multiply everything by 4, that's going to get rid of it. And I chose 4 because it's a common denominator between that 4 and that 2. If we multiplied everything by 2, it'd get rid of the 1/2, but not the 1/4. So let's multiply everything by 4. So that'll change the x into just 1x. That negative 3 will be negative 12. 1/2 will become 2. And the 12 will become 48. So even though it's the same problem, things are still equal to each other, it's going to be easier to deal with than having to deal with those fractions. So now we can work through this. So we'll move x to one side. So I'm going to subtract this x to move it over here because that will keep things positive. So we have a negative 12, 1x plus 48. Get rid of the 48 through subtraction. So that would be negative 60, and that's just x. So that's it. So x is negative 60. Number 3, 4x equals 20x minus 24. So let's move x to one side. Now, I know that most time we'd want to move the 4x over here, but then that would leave 0 over here. So we'll actually move the 20x over because we need to isolate it anyway, so we want to get away from that 24. So this time we'll actually subtract that 20x. So this will be a negative 16x equals a negative 24. Now, I'm noticing both sides are negative. So if we multiplied everything by negative 1, it just makes things positive. So that's a nice little trick that you can do just to make things simpler. If both sides are negative, or if everything is negative, if multiplying it by a negative 1 makes everything positive. So now I just need to divide by 16. Let's see, does that divide evenly? So if I divide that by 2, that's 12 and 8. By 2 again, that's 6 and 4. So this is 3 over 2. Or 1 and 1/2, either way. Number 4. Again, I'm noticing decimals, and we don't like decimals, but it's only 1/10 is what the decimal is. So if we multiply everything by 10, it'll just shift those decimals. So I'm going to multiply everything by 10, turning this into 113 and 128 and 75 and 356. So for some of you, you were fine with the decimals and you could just done it. For others, it's just easier if there's no decimals. So now we're going to go through the same steps, moving x to one side. So we'll move the 75 plus 1338, hopefully that's correct. And I would actually encourage you to use calculators, because obviously if I'm getting that wrong, it's going to mess up everything. Subtract the 128. So 356 minus 128, that is 228. So then we're going to divide everything by 38, and that's just 6. Now for number 5, again, we notice that it's decimal, so we'll multiply everything by 10. So that will turn this into 96x minus 154 equals a negative 43x plus 263. Everything just shifts one decimal. Then we're going to move the x to one side. Obviously, since this is negative, it'll be nice to move that one, making it positive. So because it's negative, which is the same as subtraction, we'll add that to move it. Plus 43. So 96 plus 43 is 139. Add the 154. And I know I am going really fast, so if I am going too fast, please ask me to redo these in class, and we can go over this in a little bit more detail. So now I'll divide by that 139 because it's multiplying, so we want to undo multiplication with division. And x is a gross decimal, so we can round it to 1.31. Okay. Then the last one for number 6. So again, I can multiply everything by 10. We'll get rid of that decimal. So minus 20x minus 14 equals 60 plus 30x. Move the x's to one side, so we'll add 20x. Because it makes it positive. So I still have negative 14 equals 60 plus 50x. Get rid of the 60 because we want to move it away from the x by subtraction. So we still have a 50x, and this is now equaling negative 74. Last step, to divide by this 50 because it's multiplying, so we're undoing multiplication. And this is probably a gross decimal. Oh, it's not too bad. So negative 1.48 is x. You'll notice it's almost always the same steps. Move things to one side, get rid of addition, subtraction, and then get rid of multiplication, division.